So what was the one thing that we should have gotten before we left that we didn't have when we were in the Bahamas?
An air conditioner.
That's a good one.
We're Chris and Sandra. We started America's Great Loop in July of 2023, but it all started in 2022 when we bought a boat we named That Away. On a foggy May morning last year, we said goodbye to Port Dover and headed down Lake Erie through the Welland Canal and onto Lake Ontario. We had a summer of fun boat projects and explored Lake Ontario and the famous Canadian Heritage Canal System, the Trent Severn Waterway. We spent the spring of 2023 overhauling the galley of That Away, and we took off in July, even though we have lots more to do. Join two not-so-young kids as we make our way around the 6,000-mile loop of North American waters.
Hey everyone, we're back in Florida, and we thought before we posted any more Bahamas videos that we'd just do a quick summary of some of the things we discovered about traveling to the Bahamas. And we're by no means experts. There's so many people out there that have done this hundreds of times and know more than we do, but this is just our observations and our experience. But if you do have more experience than us, please comment below if you disagree with what we're saying or if you found your experience to be different. Okay, so the first thing that people want to know is customs and immigration. And I did not go with the boat when it moved over. So I'm going to let Chris talk a little bit about that because he had the experience of crossing the border on the boat.
Yeah, so before we left, we used the, what's the name of the app?
Click and Clear.
The Click and Clear app that the Bahamas Customs Agency provides. And that was really straightforward. You just fill out all the information about your boat, what you're carrying, and then they're trying to get at whatever dutiable items that you may have on board. And then you pay your fee up front, and you're supposed to print all your paperwork out once you're done. They do make that request. So the customs part of it was really easy.
And how much did that cost?
I think it was, I want to say $150.
So it was $150 to get a cruising permit. I guess the customs there wasn't a fee, but to get a cruising permit was $150
for 3 months.
For 3 months.
And you can get a annual permit for, I think it's $500.
$500.
And if you, I could be wrong about this, but I think if you choose to upgrade to an annual permit, you still end up paying another $500.
Yeah, there's no interim, there's no, I want to stay for an extra 2 weeks, can I pay $60? There's none of that. So the ramification of not having a cruising permit or having an expired cruising permit is if they find you, then they will take 10% sales tax on the value of your boat. So if your boat is $100,000 and they find you and it's expired, then you're going to be paying them $10,000. So it's really important. I mean, how likely is it that you'll get caught? We never really saw enforcement people out anywhere.
I don't think we,
but yeah. Those are the rules, and I have heard stories from other people. So that's the customs.
Yeah, so customs was really straightforward, and you could do it all electronically beforehand. The other part that you have to be aware of is immigration, and it's a separate process, and I didn't find anything online about it other than a few vague references to the fact that you had to apply for a visa. And when I asked online, I asked the customs people online because they were so helpful. They said, oh, that's not us. And that's all they said. So when we arrived in the Bahamas at West End, I actually had to fill out all the immigration paperwork for the two of us on the boat.
For Andrew, Chris's brother.
Yeah, and get again, we got 3-month visas. Not a real hassle, but there was no online process for that part of it.
Right, and there's no fee for the visas, and you can extend them. You have to go into an immigration office to do it, and there's various ones around the Bahamas. Again, don't let it expire and be in the Bahamas because it's the same as having a visa to any other country, and if you're discovered, then you're considered an illegal immigrant and all sorts of things. Yeah. So just be aware of that. It's not an arduous process. You can go to many of the marinas as you enter the Bahamas that have these customs and immigration offices. Some marinas have them right there, and then some, like the West End, Chris went to an actual customs and immigration office. So it varies, but you can actually make a straight shot from Florida to, say, over at Green Turtle Key in the Abacos and check in there. So there are quite a few places to do that.
Yeah, and they're listed on the customs website. Which marinas offer that service.
So just Google it. It's pretty available. Right, so let's move on to how expensive we found it in the Bahamas. We touched on this a little bit when we were doing our budget updates, but generally we found that food was about 25% more expensive.
Anywhere from up to 50%.
Yeah, sometimes more depending on the item. So we provisioned before we went there. Many people do that. There's a little bit of an argument that you have to support the local economy, but honestly, when you're paying 30 Bahamian dollars, which is equal to 30 American dollars for a small package of frozen fruit, it gets really hard to not justify at least some provisioning in the States and over there.
Yeah.
So so it is more expensive for sure. One thing is over there that cash can be king. For example, fuel, some places they'll discount the per gallon price by 10 cents if you pay by cash. And there's some places that don't take credit cards. And speaking of credit cards, we were warned about guarding our credit cards, but we had no issues.
Yeah, we used our credit cards a lot, and there's a lot of warnings about fraud. We didn't have any negative experiences.
We didn't put anything in place. A lot of people go over there and they put alerts on their account saying, anytime my card is used, please send me an alert. And then you say, yes, that was me. We didn't bother doing that.
So your experience may be different, but anyway, that was our experience.
Yeah. And keep in mind, we only stayed in the Abaco, so we have no idea if some of these things are different for the Southern Islands. More on money, car rentals, we found were about $75 a day. A little bit not quite as organized and diligent as in the States. Chris was the one who went to pick up the car the one day we rented it, but did they even ask you to pay for insurance or?
There was no conversation about it, actually. That's a good point. I just assumed our credit card would cover it.
And
but,
it would. I'm not sure if it would in the Bahamas, but anyway, so there's really no checking of driver's licenses or anything. So just be wary. We've heard some horror stories about rental cars.
I did have to enter our driver's licenses.
Oh, you had mine. I sent mine with you,
Yeah.
right? Okay. Right. Pump outs.
Well, there weren't any. So definitely, if you're going to the Bahamas, you want to be prepared. Your boat, you need to be able to pump your blackwater tank over the side when you meet the legal requirements of being far and away enough from land.
Which in Florida, I think is 3 or 5 miles offshore. I'm not sure. It's a similar thing in the Bahamas. And so you just won't be able to pump out there that we know of. There are anchorages everywhere. Just as an aside, we think there's lots of anchorages in North America, but everywhere you go there's a place to tuck in around the islands and set anchor, and that does do a lot. If you're prepared to anchor, it does a lot to offset the cost of marina stays. So island time, everyone talks about this, sometimes stereotypically, but life does move at a slower pace there.
Yeah, it does, definitely. So getting parts, just about anything takes a lot of time.
Yeah, standing in line to get your, pay for your groceries. Here in North America, we're used to beep, 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 and everything going really fast. It doesn't go so fast here. So you just have to be flexible and not have too much of a schedule. Boat parts. I'll let you talk about this and the struggle over there. And
Well, everybody kind of says it, and I would say it's fairly true. Try to make sure you've got the spare parts that you think might fail while you're over there on board, because of what I just said before, it is, there aren't a lot of large population centers. Freeport is a pretty small community. I think it's 30,000. I forget exactly.
40, Freeport is about 40.
And Nassau is the largest single community at I think 400,000.
400,000.
And I suspect you can get a lot of parts there. We were never in Nassau. Everywhere else, it's small communities, and it's challenging to track down parts. And if you're going to get them shipped, you're going to wait a while for them to arrive, and it all just takes time. So, if you have a breakdown, expect it to take a while.
Or walk the docks. Like we a couple of times, other people on boats came by and knocked on our door and said, "Oh, I need this fuse. Do you have one?" Or I've had this breakdown. Do you have anything to help with or whatever? Because there really aren't any options in some of the islands to do that. In terms of weather and crossing, we heard from everyone that this winter was very challenging for weather in the Bahamas.
Well,
much windier.
Pretty much everywhere it's been challenging.
So what we were seeing in Florida, we were seeing over there. So there are different ways to get there, different routes, and people typically try to go over to one of the islands in the Bahamas to take advantage of the Gulf Stream, which runs south to north roughly. So the shortest way to get over there, I think, is from Key Largo-ish to Bimini, and that's about 42 nautical miles. West End to where we are, near West Palm Beach, was about 55 to 60, and you can shoot further if you want to. But, you know, pick your weather window. Your comfort level is going to depend on who you are and how much boating you've done, but generally in the Bahamas, the winter is windier, and then right about now, the wind starts to calm down. However, the heat gets pretty much like what we're seeing in South Florida right now, very, very hot.
We relied on Chris Parker's weather service when we were making our crossings. And in addition to all of the apps that we typically use, like Windy and a few others, and being subscribed to Chris's weather updates was just reassuring that what we were picking actually matched what somebody else thought about it, who interprets all this, and you could actually ask him direct questions. So to me, that was really, really a good idea.
Yeah, for sure. Peace of mind, really. A couple more things about Bahamian money and paying things when you're over in the Bahamas. Take cash. We took $700 in cash. We probably should have taken twice that, because there were times we used our credit card where we could have gotten a discount and didn't. Chris forgot his credit card when he went to get the cell phone SIM cards, which we'll talk about in a minute, and ended up paying for the cell phone stuff. Like, I don't know, 150 of it went to that. So you can't carry too much cash. You can use them interchangeably over there. You can give American dollars. They'll either give back change in Bahamian or American dollars. So it's just kind of on par. And we just tried to use up our Bahamian money before we cross back, because of course it's not going to be used here. But cell phone, oh, and another thing about money is if you are paying bills back home online, there will be some instances where you can't log into a Canadian or an American. Well, American probably you can, but if you're Canadian, what I found is utility bills. Companies like utilities, they can detect that you're not in North America, and it won't let you connect to your online account. So our son has a paid VPN service, and we use that just to connect to a server in Canada so that I could get in and pay some bills.
I now understand why so many boating channels are sponsored by VPN services.
Yeah, because
it does pay. Like it was very handy.
Yeah, there were about 4 different times where I needed to use it, and otherwise we couldn't have taken care of business. Just pay attention to the kinds of things you need to do with your money before you leave. Cell phones.
Yeah, we got a leave SIM cards. So in other words, we just pulled out our Canadian SIM cards. The first day I was there, I went to the Aleve store close to where we were, and it's really easy, and it just worked so well.
No contracts.
You just, every month you just renew your plan. So the first month you get the SIM card with the plan. There was no extra charge for it, and then every month you just renew. You just buy a new plan. You either continue with the one you have or you change it. Honestly, it's better than
much simpler than in
much
North
simpler
America.
than what we're doing in Canada. That's for sure.
So we got pretty big plans because the boat uses a data plan.
Yeah. So we we did all of our internet using cell service, the SIM card. So we got a data only SIM card for the router on the boat, and it was fine. The only time we lost signal was when we were traveling on the north side of Grand Bahama Island.
Great Sail Key.
Right around Great Sail Key, but at Great Sail Key we had cell service.
Well, we had data.
We
could get data. We couldn't use the cell phones.
But for a couple of hours either side of Great Sail Key, we lost the service.
Connectivity, yeah.
But all along the Abacos, absolutely no problem.
Yeah.
And all around anywhere else we were, no problem.
And we heard from other people that they've had similar experiences in the Southern Islands. One last thing, marina costs are typical of what you'd get here. Hang on, I'm just going to wait till he shuts his radio off. So one last thought about marina costs. They're typical of what you'd see here in the States. $2.25 a foot, sometimes a little bit higher. Hydro and water is extra. Water tends to be anywhere from 25 to 35 cents a gallon, and hydro is like 7.5, 8.5 cents per kilowatt. So just be prepared for that. It's not a huge increase, but it does add to the cost.
Yeah.
Anyway, next week we'll continue with our Bahama videos. And people are starting to show up to work, so I think we're done.
So what was the one thing that we should have gotten before we left that we didn't have when we were in the Bahamas?
An air conditioner.
That's a good one.
But only for the last week. It was fairly reasonable until the last week. But the last week we were there, they had a heat wave and it was almost unbearable.
Yeah, I would have argued an ice maker.
An ice maker.
Because we would have paid for it.
Because we paid for a bag of ice, $8. And
Yeah.
we were, and anyway, yep, ice maker maybe.
Yeah, but not a water maker. With
Not
the
a
way
water
we were
maker.
traveling, anytime we went to a marina, we were able to fill up.
And
with
our water lasts two weeks on the boat.
Yeah.
More cash. I'd bring more cash. And probably if we do this again, we get a freezer, a separate freezer, and take over more frozen food.
Just one thing, right?
Just one thing.
That you would have done differently. Anyway.
It's all information, honey.
Yeah.
We did so many things wrong that we had to do lots of things differently.
We did so many things right.
Okay, see you next time.
We hope this short video helps you out as you plan your trip to the Bahamas. If there's something we missed or something you want clarification on, please put your question down below and we'll try to answer it. I've also put a number of links in the description below, but Google is your friend. We found most of our information through Google. It also pays to talk to other boaters who may have the inside scoop on things that have changed since the last time anything was posted officially on websites. Next week, we continue to explore the Abaco Islands and get ready to meet our daughter Helen, who flies over to meet us for a week. Thanks for watching. See you next time.